Fearless Fundraisers. I'm Dawn Lego, and it's time once again to buckle up for a new episode of Raise Nation, the one and only podcast made to inspire fundraisers like you to continue making impact in our communities, building better tomorrows, and exchanging ideas. So whether you're a trailblazer or seasoned pro, you'll pick up the trends that transform your fundraising. And together, we'll dive into lively conversations and chat with industry-leading fundraisers and thought leaders to explore those hot-button issues and innovative ideas. So stay with us for the next 30 minutes while we inspire you to embrace the future of fundraising. All right, so let's get going. It is a new year. It's season 2 of Raise Nation Radio, and I'm very, very pleased to welcome our first guest of the year, Victoria Munro from the Austen House in Staten Island, New York. Did I get that right, Victoria?
You did. Hi, everyone. As Dawn said, my name's Victoria Munro, and I'm the Executive Director of the Austen House Museum. We are a small house museum, one of 23 historic houses in New York City, and we're located in a beautiful waterfront park on the north shore of Staten Island. And I know that Dawn has questions for me, but it is very important to lay out just the uniqueness of our site, but I'll let her take over.
No, of course, I want to hear it all. And I love the accent, by the way. It's such a pleasure talking to you, Victoria, just for the accent alone. But tell us about all the magic and the beauty and what's so special and unique about the museum. I have a million questions for you, but that's a great place to start.
Okay, so as I said, we're located on the north shore of Staten Island, waterfront location. We are in a New York City park, and our site is completely landmarked, and it has a national designation as a site of LGBTQ history. Now, the reason for that is our namesake, Alice Austen, who is a Victorian woman born in 1866, and she left us a legacy of over 8,000 photographs.
Amazing.
Of a changing New York City. She was, as in the introduction, you were talking about fundraising trailblazers. Well, Alice Austen was a trailblazer. She was a woman who broke the rules and lived her life according to her own pleasures, if you like, and her creativity. She was a lesbian woman, and her long-term love of her life, they were together for well over 53 years, and they spent 30 of those years living together in what we now call the Alice Austen House.
Oh, this was the house that she inhabited with her soulmate. Is that right?
That's right. And it's
wow.
An incredible story. Alice's mother was abandoned by her father when Alice was tiny. And so she moved in to what the family called Clear Comfort. It was a home that Alice Austen's grandfather bought in 1844. And they made that their permanent residence after wanting to seek refuge really from what was a very filthy New York City, and they had lost 2 sons to illness. So it was a real refuge. A lot of Staten Island at the time was rural, and it was more of a holiday destination. So Alice is a small child, and she moves into this house that's full of adults. So she's kind of the only child. So at the time, her grandmother and grandfather lived there. Her Aunt Min, who was incredibly creative and funny, and she was married to a Danish sea captain, Oswald Mueller. And of course, her mother and also her uncle Peter, who became a chemist. And they're all a very eccentric Victorian family. They're well-heeled, and they really dote on Alice. And I think that that's a really interesting point to sort of understand how she evolved to be this real dynamo of a woman who was super interested in technology. She was the first woman on Staten Island to own a car, and she knew how to fix it. And she created all of these safe spaces for women to be unaccompanied by men. So she was the founder of the Staten Island Garden Club. She had cooking clubs. She was the founder of the Staten Island Bicycle Club. A lot of things that gave women freedoms that they weren't afforded at the time.
We are talking the 1800s and early 1900s, right? We're not talking yesterday. We're talking the late 1800s and early 1900s. I mean, what a pioneer Alice was.
Absolutely. And, I call her an accidental activist, because just by doing all of these things and creating these spaces that she wanted to be involved in and pursue, she really provides this like incredibly inspiring example of a life that is so full and well lived. Of course, she was white and privileged, but Alice was just incredibly, she was a rebel. That's how I describe her.
Wow.
And it's
and just unapologetic. I mean, she just was very comfortable in her own skin and
champion sportswoman. She was a brilliant tennis player, and Staten Island was the first place in America that the game of tennis was played. And so
is that true? Really?
Yes, it's true. So all of these things feed in so interestingly to New York City history. But the thing that Alice that sets her aside, a lot of women did take up photography during this time. It was an encouraged hobby. Also, because it was a new technology, interestingly, women were learning it at the same time as men. So I think, that's quite interesting. It sort of leveled some of the playing field there. But Alice, most women worked in the studio. Alice worked a lot outside
in the field.
The studio. So she was one of the first, what we would call street photographers. And so she would take up to 50 pounds of photographic equipment with her onto the streets of New York City with her bicycle. And she would photograph immigrant populations at work. And she also, very interestingly, spent 10 years documenting the people and the quarantine conditions on Hoffman and Swinburne Islands. So you've got to think this is a New York that's experiencing its highest rate of immigration. So these huge boatloads of people were coming in through what we know as the New York Narrows, and that's the body of water that sits right in front of the Alice Austen house. So Austen would have witnessed these boats coming through that passage, and our house is what Alice's grandfather turned from a 2-room Dutch farmhouse built in 1690 into a Victorian Gothic cottage. And it was known as the first house on the left. So as you entered New York.
I'll meet you at the first house on the left.
Market. And I have a friend who's a boatmaster that operates the tugs that guide in the huge tankers, because it's interesting because it's also New York's working waterway. And he said, no, they still use it as a marker, this little white house.
First house on the left.
As you come in.
What a story. Remarkable. I'm so inspired to, jump into the car or hit some mass transportation. I'm fortunate to live close. I'm in New Jersey, so I can't wait to come over to see the Alice Austen house. I mean, you've so inspired me. Such history, such amazing history. How do we have any documentation on how Alice was able to move day to day? I mean, was there the things that we see today, like ridicule and bullying in public? Like, did she experience that? I mean, she seems like a very strong, unapologetic woman who knew who she was and had courage and bravery and just so many things to admire about her. But was it difficult for her?
Well, I think it's quite interesting, and it really is. It's an important part of queer history. It's pre-Stonewall, of course, way pre-Stonewall, but in the Victorian era, there was a greater acceptance at that time of women having romantic relationships, if you like. It was sort of thought that it was like practice for marriage. So there was and some people call it a Boston marriage when two women lived together. But for Alice, like I said, she was a white woman who was privileged. Her friends were very well heeled, but that story didn't continue for her entire life. And we have to actually also remember she died in 1952, which is an extraordinarily oppressive time for anyone that was living in the queer community.
How did we go from such acceptance to the hump that we had to get over? I mean, I would like to think that we're more live and let live today. I hope we're more less judgmental, but she certainly had to go through or journey through a Victorian time period where things were more accepting to the complete opposite of that. And she had to journey through that.
Well, I think, her stories resonate so much for people today. And we try to ground ourselves in storytelling and all of our educational programs, our photographic art programs. And I wouldn't say it was wildly more accepting. I would just say that it was sort of a set of assumptions.
Different lifestyle. Yep.
Right. But it hadn't been, and when Alice was young, it wasn't considered yet a medical problem as it became to be gay, lesbian, trans, or non-binary. And so Alice and Gertrude actually lost all their money in the stock market crash of 1929.
Oh.
And so you have two women who've been used to traveling to Europe every year. They were incredibly outgoing, as I, explained. But suddenly they didn't have that set of funds. And it was a big shift also in New York. And Alice then, we know from records and letters and other things, the struggle that she went through to try and protect her home. Claire Comfort, as the family called it, was also Alice's muse. So it was her studio. So we're also a part of Historic Artist Homes and Studios, which is a program of the National Trust. And so she had her studio, her dark room there. She used the grounds as an outdoor studio. This house had meant so much to her on so many levels. And her and Gertrude struggled to stay there until 1945 when they were evicted.
Oh, they were evicted. Oh, so that was about 7 years prior to her death.
Right. And so they did try to take a small apartment close by, but financial and health issues prevented them from being able to continue to reside there. And Gertrude's family said that she could move back in with them in Brooklyn, but they would not take Alice because they did not agree with the relationship. So Alice ended up signing a note saying she only had $20 to her name, a pauper's note, and she was put in the Staten Island Poor Farm, or the Staten Island Farm Colony.
This is tragic.
Yeah, when she was evicted, Gertrude and her had been very active members of the Staten Island Historical Society, and she called their director and asked him to take all of her glass plate negatives to protect them because she thought they could be destroyed. They would be distributed. I mean, and a lot have been lost. And they ended up sitting in the basement at the Historical Society, which is now known as Historic Richmond Town, until a man called Oliver Jensen was writing a book and researching for a book called The Revolt of the American Woman. And he was looking for images of women, and through his research and helpers and interns, he came across this collection of glass plate negatives, which had nearly been destroyed on several occasions in a basement at Richmond Town. And he was at a board meeting and he said to them, you know, and this is in 1951, if only Alice Austen was still alive. And they said, well, she is. She's in the poorhouse. And so he went to visit her, and he had enlarged some of the photographs. And she said automatically, these are not my photos, because she only contact printed. Of course, she knew they were her images. And so he was able to sell some of the images to magazines and raise enough money to get her out of the poorhouse into a proper nursing home facility. Gertrude, all the while, had been visiting Alice weekly, which was a massive journey then for her. And they created Alice Austen Day. And they brought her back to what we now know as the Alice Austen house as a part of that day. And those set of photographs that were taken on that day, she took her last photograph. She took the cameraman's camera and photographed him. But those photographs are really sad, because the Alice Austen house, her beautiful home, was in complete disrepair. And it got worse until there was an option to tear it down, and the community rallied and managed to get a landmark designation for it. And then ownership was transferred to New York City and then Parks. That didn't save it automatically. That was in the 1967, when the original Friends of Alice Austen was formed. That's my nonprofit. We are Friends of Alice Austen.
Got it. Okay. And I was going to ask, so you answered the question before I got to ask. So let's fast forward to today. What is the mission of the Alice Austen House and Museum? It's owned by the Staten Island Historical Society?
No, it's owned by New York City Parks.
Okay, Parks. That's right. You mentioned that.
And so the nonprofit, which the original members of Friends of Alice Austen included people like Bernice Abbott, Edward Steichen, Margot Gale, these fantastic individuals.
Wow.
So the nonprofit, it cares for the house. Parks contributes to the upkeep and maintenance of the house. But we interpret the interior of the house along with our overarching partner, Historic House Trust of New York. And so we program it, curate it, and we have a live-in caretaker, Paul Moakley, who's absolutely phenomenal and is also the editor-at-large of Time magazine.
Okay. The big shout out. Who are we shouting out? Paul
Moakley.
Hi, Paul.
He is super invested in the photographic community and just an incredible man. But moreover, he maintains all of the gardens in the park, which are beautiful Victorian gardens. So it's a massive undertaking, as well as everything else that he does in his life. And he curates exhibitions with me too. So
what's the mission? Tell me,
So the mission is to inspire the public through the preservation and telling the story of Alice Austen's life and work, and to explore personal identity through photography. So that part's really key, that exploration of personal identity. You know, we're looking at this history, which is Victorian, coming into early 20th century, but really taking that as an inspiration for how we work today with our diverse student populations, our queer teens, our queer seniors, you know, and telling that story very truthfully. You know, we can teach a K class, a first grade class, and we are talking about Alice and Gertrude's relationship. I don't think you can really separate her work from her identity. And so we encourage students to really explore their cultural history, depending on the group, their sexual identity, their coming out stories or not coming out stories. It's a very safe space where, we're able to operate on the margins of what museums can do, and provide this kind of real grounding in history that a lot of students just have no idea existed because they're so rooted in the now.
Right.
And then, we're also then a very special place for people to pilgrimage to, because it certainly is a destination.
Yeah. It's amazing. I'm just listening to this story, and it's really remarkable. What is some of your programming? What does your programming include?
So we essentially, our museum functions as a photographic museum. So we're not your traditional historic house that you might walk into and see setups of antique furniture and that kind of thing. We were at one time. It's not what I see as being a way to connect to history. Antiques have their place, but unless they're authentic and really tell the story, then I'm not going to fill a room with them. I want to fill that room with students. So we maintain three contemporary spaces. So we essentially run as a contemporary platform for photographers. And then we have 3 historical spaces, which are devoted to all of the themes in Alice Austen's life and work, which was just reopened in 2019. So all of the museum spaces were renovated in 2019 and opened in May that year. Mm-hmm. So that means that we put on 3 changing contemporary exhibitions per year. Everything is photographic based. And that actually, if we want to feed into funding, well, also we run around about 10 to 15 different and unique educational programs per year. So some of them are long-term. They can go for up to 16 to 20 weeks within a school. So students really get this opportunity to delve deep into this. We work with photographic literacy, also spoken word inspired by the poetry of Audre Lorde, who also lived in Staten Island, which a lot of people don't know that she spent 17 years living with her partner, Frances Clayton, just a mile from the Alice Austen house. So we bring in models. So we start our story with Alice and branch out from there. And then we program the park. So the park's been really essential during COVID. This is a space where people can do yoga. There's all sorts of programs. We're back to back with programs throughout the summer. We have a stage that we often install. We make partnerships with artists. There's art on the lawn. So it's not...
Wow.
The expectation to experience our space is not limited to coming inside the museum, because for a lot of people, what they want is that healing space that is the outdoors, that is the experience of being in the park.
Yeah, a place of self-reflection and
Absolutely.
Inspiration. And okay, so I'm a little gobsmacked at the moment, because you have this amazing grounds and museum. You have programming, renovations, running the house, the photography, the story. And you mentioned that the renovations were just completed in 2019, mm-hmm. which is 1 year before the global health crisis, right? So I would imagine that there's a tremendous amount of fundraising needed to go into keeping the upkeep alone, plus the look back and the look ahead. And your renovations completed 1 year prior to what we know as coronavirus. So what does fundraising look like, and how are you able to fundraise? And can you tell us a little bit about your board of directors and how engaged you are with them, or how engaged they are with you, and share with the fundraising space how you enlisted them to respond in the wake of COVID? Because that's a pretty interesting story too.
It is. And, it had been such a tremendous effort to fundraise to, achieve what was the completed renovation, and then stepping almost straight into COVID was really scary. And I know that lots of other nonprofit leaders, felt the same way. How are we going to be considered relevant also? But because the programs are so strong, we had a lot of weight behind that we'd worked so hard on our programming to make sure that our programs were diverse and representing what was, contemporary outlooks on lots of different issues. And of course, during that time, we also had Black Lives Matter. So the face of everything changed so dramatically. And, obviously there was CARES Act grants and PPP, which were essential, but fundraising became that $1 million question.
Yeah.
Yes, we did. We pivoted. Straight away, we were one of the first institutions on Staten Island, or I think we were the first, to do a virtual tea, because, of course, we were just about to, I think within days of the total shutdown, have our fundraising event, our spring fundraising event. And so we took that virtual and felt like that was quite a success story. Now, by this point in time, everyone's feeling like, if I have to sit through another virtual gala, I don't know, just take my money.
Zoom fatigue.
But, we're fatigued. So
yes.
So, and my board has been meeting in the virtual space for all of this time. And fundraising is where you really engage your board. You can,
or so you hope, right? I mean, that's not always so easy. Tell me how you do that.
It's a struggle. But if you don't provide your board with a roadmap of how to fundraise, then you shouldn't have those expectations.
Well, let's just stop there. I have to underscore what you just said. If you don't provide your board with a roadmap of your fundraising, you really can't have expectations of engagement. So there's a key to success right there. Provide your board with that roadmap.
Right. So I was searching for a tool to do this without saying to them, we're going to do another virtual event, or, it was just very hard. We didn't have like a lot of energy. We had like tons of energy in our programming in the summer, but we did that all for free. We did not monetize that. It was important to give back to the community so that they could sense the value in what we were doing. So then it was time, and of course you have to fundraise. This is an essential element of what we do, but it is so essential to board engagement. So very, very lucky. I have an incredibly engaged board vice president. And I brought to her wanting to utilize a platform that would help us separate our donate page on our website into something that the board could completely connect with on their own individual, in their own way. Unique way.
Yeah.
Each board member brings with them something very different. And it's very...
How large is your board? How many people are on your board?
So it ranges from year to year, anywhere from 13 up to 18, which is relatively large for the size of my institution. But one of the things that we do is we do not have a large dues structure. And in fact, I'd almost like to get rid of that entirely to encourage more board diversity and just have more emphasis on what is friend-raising leading to fundraising.
Leading to fundraising. Okay, I'm with you.
Yes. Yeah. which is how we'll get more board engagement, more board members, or, we stick very well, we have a strict set of bylaws which we stick to in terms of cycling on and off for terms and things like that. But so I discovered One Cause. And
now, when you say One Cause, it's the One Cause peer-to-peer platform. Is that what you were? That's the platform? Right. Got it. Okay.
I was searching for something that I could specifically use for board engagement. I wanted to really steer them towards something that they could be involved in. So it wasn't me telling them we've got to sell tickets to something. It was more about their personal connection to the Alice Austen house.
Their story and how they felt they could tap their networks best to fundraise.
Right. It all goes in the same basket. If someone can donate $10, you've raised a friend. So the way that I decided to structure it for my board was to connect to the fact that we'd done this beautiful new renovation, and was to have them choose an object from the collection or a photograph that they specifically connected to personally.
Oh.
And write a story about why that object was important, or photograph was important to their connection to the Alice Austen house and Alice's story. And so we could use photographs of those items from our collection. So no, you didn't have to have your own headshot. Some people aren't comfortable with that. And you could use that item to kind of tell your story. For example,
genius. This was genius and fun. Like, who would want to do this?
It was fun. It was really fun. And it wasn't a heavy lift. I wasn't asking them to open their own wallets this time. Correct. So what I was asking them to do was create this page that they would use the platform that was the One Cause platform, peer-to-peer, to share it out with their friends via email, Facebook, whatever social media platforms they used. And then we also created mini campaigns for them on our social media. So we took their finished pages and shared them out, like 2 board members a week. We would spotlight the board member and say how appreciative we were as a staff and an institution for this board member, and share their little story, and people could donate to their page via that.
Brilliant. This was brilliant and fun and all about the story and the why and the storytelling.
Right. I'm not interested in fundraising that is not mission centric. If it's not mission centric, I don't think it's going to be successful. And so, what makes sense for us, and this made perfect sense. And it also was a chance to promote some of the things people hadn't seen when our doors had been shut or were just open for ticketed entry, and, the idea is to also explode the museum digitally to expand access. So it fed into all of these things that have become such massive priorities for us over this time. And of us more about, we prioritize access. We were able to justify fundraising for technology, which has always been hard in the historic house field. So we feel like we're coming into 2022 really strong, whilst we're not thrilled about all of the news of spiking cases and things like that.
I know.
This is
2 years now and still spiking. It's terrible.
Yeah. And my board members who participated, and I said, look, you don't have to participate if you don't want. If this is not your thing, you don't do email, but for those that did, just said, they couldn't believe it. They got a great response. And it really showed them also the power of their own friendships and connections.
Also the power of storytelling, which we certainly tell.
Yeah, too. But often people don't think, oh, I just bought a house last year. Maybe the realtor might want to support my campaign. I'm on this board or whatever. They're not really thinking about that. And so I feel like it really got them in a mindset to, really think, okay, what is my outreach? What is my pitch? And feel really good about that. It was incredibly positive.
Because it wasn't a donate pitch. It was more of a story, a why from the heart. And
it was a story, and it was like, we programmed so much in 2021 when so many other institutions were struggling. We're so lucky we do have this park. We have this outdoor platform, and but yeah, we worked through the pandemic extraordinarily well, and we want to do better this year. It's shown us like where the community connection is, or what's the lack, who is not coming, so and these are all of these sort of things with discovering through fundraising, they link back into your diversity, equity, inclusion. I'm not thrilled with events that cost $275 to go, right? The other thing that's lagging for so many museums is traditional membership programs. So membership is really down. People want experiences. They don't necessarily need to have a card in their wallet anymore to say, I'm a member of this, right? And so we also wanted to up our membership. So we said, if you donate at the $25 level and up, we will send you a free membership. So it's like growing our friends at the same time, because then every single person that donates at the $25 level or more is going to receive a letter from us with a card to the Alice Austen House and added as a member. But also there was the allowance within that if you were a donator and you already had a membership to the Alice Austen House, you're already a supporter, you could give that as a gift, Christmas gift to someone.
There you go.
So you could give the gift of membership, which often you see in fundraising campaigns, but it was something that I felt was, a lot more connected and at an affordable level.
And tangible. You're actually giving something other than just a donation in somebody's name.
Right.
So yeah, right. Beautiful. I cannot believe that we've gone well beyond the half hour, but the story is just so intriguing. Your fundraising is brilliant. And I know the whole nonprofit community and fearless fundraisers out there are going to garner so much from what you shared today. So I truly, truly appreciate you sharing and spending the time with us today. So Fearless Fundraisers, that's about all we have time for today. Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed today's Raise Nation topic and your daily dose of fundraising inspiration. Tune in for a new episode release every Thursday at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time. That's Thursdays, 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time. But in the meantime, be sure to listen to all the episodes on Raise Nation Radio and follow the channel that you like best so that you can get the notifications about our new guests. Fundraisers are doing amazing things to build better tomorrows for our communities. Their stories are awe-inspiring, as you just heard from Victoria. You won't want to miss a single episode. I would like to thank our sponsor, One Cause, for making this episode possible. One Cause is driving the future of fundraising with easy-to-use software solutions that help nonprofits connect with their donors. Be sure to check them out at onecause.com and visit the resource tab on their homepage for a broad catalog of ebooks that you'll find very helpful. A huge shout out and thanks to my guest, Victoria. I so appreciate the history lesson, learning about Alice Austen and the Alice Austen House Museum. Thank you, Victoria, so much for being with us today. I truly enjoyed our conversation. Any last words of inspiration?
Oh,
I know I put you on the spot there.
I would seek out more from Alice. She's such an inspiration, and of course,
I know I will.
We have amazing walkthrough tours that we've created of the Alice Austen house. So if you want to taste before you come, just visit www.aliceausten.org. And Austen is spelled Austen. It's not
Austen. Okay. I was going to ask for how we get in touch with you, but so right. aliceausten.org, Austen.
That's right.
We got it. And we'll also drop that in the comments as well. Well, thank you again so much. Fearless Fundraisers, that's a wrap. Until next time, I'm Dawn Lego, and this is Raise Nation Radio. Stay fearless out there.